When I was young, I hated the desert. I hated the idea of the desert. I'd never been in one. I just hated the idea of it. And then when we moved here, I was like, you got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding. There is nothing. There's nothing here. It's so barren and lifeless and dead. And then it took about, by the way, for those of you who don't know, we're in El Paso, Texas, on the far, far, far southwest corner of Texas, right on the border with Mexico. And there is desert for 600, 500 miles in every direction. 400 to 500 miles in every direction. And I just hated it. But then after a few years, I started to sort of get used to it, getting the flow of the rhythm of things in the desert, which is, of course, way slower. And then I started to slow down more, and slow down more, and slow down more, and slow down more. And then I started to kind of like it. Now I love it. And then I started seeing, as I was getting closer and closer to actually liking it, I kept seeing these verses in the Bible that talked about the desert linked with the last move of God on earth, which is, of course, tavniot, pictures, that people doing Judaism, Christians doing Judaism, and Jews together doing Judaism as pictures to learn from, not as obedience. And the main one was in Isaiah 40, which says, it's the one that John used to describe himself, which was, I'm a voice crying out in the desert, make straight the ways, get ready the ways of the Lord, so the Lord can come. Well, that's happening again. And I started thinking, wondering, why the desert? And I'm thinking, I never read the book of Bamidbar. This is 30 years ago. I never read the book of Numbers because it's so boring. It's worse than Leviticus. This is what I thought. I'd go in there once in a while to see something. But then as I started to embrace the desert, I started saying, wait a minute. This is probably the key book for the entirety of the Torah, the 5 books of Moshe. Not Genesis, when everything was created and God set everything in order and started calling Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Not Exodus, when he brought the Jews out of Egypt and he brought us to Mount Sinai, and then he gave us the Mishkan, and we got all the details for the Mishkan. We set up the Mishkan, house for God. Magnificent. I thought that was it. I thought that was the key. And then Leviticus, all about the sacrifices, and I started seeing all the amazing stuff in the sacrifices, so I was like, wow, that's cool. But then Bamidbar, and they're just like, everything they do is wrong. Every single thing the Jews did in the desert was wrong. And I'm waiting for something good to come up, some nice story to come. It never comes. And it never comes, and it never comes, and it never comes. And I'm like, what is this? But then I saw, if they'd have responded correctly to the Mishkan that they had with them in the desert, when nothing is there for you except God, everything would have come together and the kingdom would have come. But they didn't. Everything they did was wrong. But had they responded correctly, that would have been it. It would have been heaven on earth. It was for Moshe, who constantly kept going before God in the Mishkan, but it wasn't for anybody else, I guess. Certainly wasn't for that generation in the wilderness. And that's the key. God brought us to the desert to strip everything away and say, here I am. What are you going to do with me? You going to trust me for every single thing in your life or no? Because you really don't have a choice. And that's what I hated about it. It's having my choice taken away. I want to be in control. I want my life. I didn't choose to be born. I didn't choose to have the family I have. I didn't choose anything. And then it's like, hey, it's not your choice anyway, dummy. Michael, it ain't your choice anyway. You didn't choose anything. So what, you think you're going to choose now? You're a Jew. It's not your job to choose your life. Your job is to serve me, God says. So he takes us to where he takes everything away. And he takes everything away so that we can go, okay, Daddy, give to me, take care of me. And God loves that. He loves to see his kids doing that. I hate it. He loves it. We all hate it, I guess. I know I do. Maybe you walk on water. Maybe you're not like me, but I hate it. But that's really what Numbers is all about, and we started this week. And it's really just bad story after bad story after bad story. But if you look past the text to the subtext, to what's underneath the text, you'll see what's really going on. That God is taking away everything from the Jews to say, I'm right here. I'm right here in front of you. So, we're going to talk about stars today. Obviously, from the music and if you got the notes. So, we've been talking about counting. Last week we looked at, because we're in the counting of the Omer, we looked at us counting, how do we count? We count the days of the counting of the Omer. We count the days to Shabbat every 7 days. We count 7 Shabbats to Shavuot. We count 7 weeks or Shabbatot to Shavuot. We count 7, sets of 7 years to the Jubilee, the 49th year, and the 50th year of the Jubilee. So it's all these counting that we do. But what about God counting? That's what the name of the book is, Numbers, although it's not that in Hebrew. It's Bamidbar, but because there's so many countings in the book of Bamidbar, they call it Numbers. And you know what? The Jews call it that too. You know what it's called in Hebrew, the book of Numbers besides Bamidbar? It's called Sefer HaPikudim. Pikud, visitation or counting. That's the word that's used for counting, which I'll show you. It's really called Sefer HaPikudim because there's several countings that God does of Israel, and it's always of Israel. Now in Psalm 8, 1 through 4, it says this, Yehovah, our Lord, Adonai Adonenu, how majestic is your name in all the earth, who has displayed your splendor above the heavens. When I think about your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have, we sing that song, it says, which you ordained, right? It's not ordained in Hebrew, it's covered or protected or set up. Kima, which you covered or protected or set up. What is man that you remember him, and the son of man that you pikud him, that you count him, but you visit him? What, in other words, why am I so significant that you count me? But we read Numbers, and we just kind of go, Numbers, there are numbers. There's this and this and this and this numbers. And we flatline. But the truth is, in Judaism, to be counted, pikud, literally is a term of endearment. And which I'll show you. It's a term of closeness and intimacy. Yes?
Would that also be like a rise?
It's similar to that word, but it's different. The word arise, kum. It's different. It's spelled differently. But it's similar. There is a link to it. Okay, so here's what Rashi says on Numbers 1:1. It says, you shall count, Moshe, count Israel. So this is what Rashi says. Because they were dear to him. Very first thing he says. In other words, count them because I love them so much. Now, how does Rashi get that out of Moshe, count the children of Israel? Now, we're going to write a book of Numbers, and there are lists, and there are numbers. Numbers. How do you get love and closeness out of that? But Rashi got it, because he knows what pikud means. Because they were dear to him, he counted them often. Often. He counted them twice in Exodus, right? And then he counts them, 4 times in the book of Numbers. When they left Egypt, he counted them. When it says there were 600,000 men on foot. How did they know? How did they know there's 600,000 men on foot? How did they know? They counted. So before they left Egypt, or maybe on their way out, they counted everybody, and they counted 600,000 or so men on foot. So he counted them then. And then when many fell from the sin of the golden calf, he counted them again to know the number of the survivors. Why? Because he loves the survivors. When he came to cause his Shekhinah to rest among them, it should say Shekhinah, not Shechina. Shekhinah to rest among them, he counted them. That was when the Mishkan was set up on Nisan 1. The Mishkan was set up, the Holy Spirit came and covered the Mishkan, yeah? And God counted them then. How? By taking the half shekel. That's the day that he took the half shekel. And that was the means by counting them, was the half shekel per gulgulot, per skull. A half shekel per head, per skull. On the 1st of Nisan, the Mishkan was erected, and on the 1st of Iyar, he counted them. Now, what we're reading now, what we're going to read in this Torah portion, is the 1st of Iyar. Back when Mishkan was erected, that was the 1st of Nisan. So he counts on the 1st of Nisan, then he counts on the 1st of Iyar. So let's read the passage. Then the Lord spoke to Moshe in the wilderness of Sinai in the tent of meeting on the 1st of the 2nd month, Iyar. By the way, we are finishing Iyar today, and we're coming into the 1st of Sivan. In the 2nd year after they had come out of the land of Egypt, saying, count the head, Rosh, of the congregation of the sons of Israel. What's weird about that? Nothing?
Single head, many people.
Right, single head. It's one head. Count the head, not the heads. Remember, he took the half shekel, 1 half shekel per gulgula, per skull, or per head. But now he says, count all of them, their head. So in other words, Israel itself is the head of something. What do you think it's the head of? Yeah, the body of God. This is where the body of God began. This is where the concept of the, quote, body of Christ, the body of Messiah, the body of God, this is where it started, right here. Count the head of all the congregation of the sons of Israel by families, plural, by fathers' houses, plural, to the number of names, plural, every male, remember their heads, now he uses that word again, gulgulotam, their heads, from 20 years old and upward, whoever goes out to war in Israel. You and Aaron shall pikud them. And here's where he first uses the word pikud, to number. Because before he said, number the heads. Number the heads. Just use the word like we use, counting of the Omer. Sfirat, safar. But now he uses the word pikud, which literally means visit, to visit. Visit them by their armies. Also, there shall be with you a man of each tribe, each one head of his father's house. And then it lists all the heads of the 12 tribes. Then later on it says, so Moshe and Aharon took these men who had been set, and this is a weird word. You would think it would be either the word pikud, which means appoint or visit or set in place or something like that. I would think it'd be the word pikud here. Or maybe the word they mistranslate is command, tzava, which means to set up, right? It's not. It's to set in a socket. It's the same word that is used for the 12 jewels that are set in the breastpiece in the choshen of the high priest. It's the same exact word. Who's being set in sockets here? The heads of the 12 tribes. That's why they're in the sockets. So that's why he uses the same word, because it's the 12 tribes in the sockets on the choshen. Does that make sense? So here it's doing the same exact picture of what the high priest is walking around wearing, numbering everybody. Because now he's got his garments on. Because they have been built, they've been constructed, they've been made, and they clothed Aaron with them. And he's walking around with these 12 stones for the 12 tribes, and he says, okay, get those guys, that guy's this guy, that guy's this guy, that guy's this guy, that guy's this guy. And set them in the sockets. I thought that was amazing, just from that one word. Who had been set in a socket by name. By name. What's on the gems? The names of the 12 tribes. According to the number of names, from 20 years old and upward, head by head, so he numbered or pikuded them in the wilderness of Sinai. So this is where Rashi got the idea that this is about love. This is about God's care and kindness for Israel. And then it says it again and again and again and again and again. Guess how many times it uses the word pikud in the book of Numbers? Just take a guess. Boy, you're close. 73. 73. Isn't that a trip? Now the sons of Reuben, Israel's firstborn, their birth recorded by their families, by their fathers' houses, to the number of names, head by head, every male from 20 years old and upward, whoever goes out to war. That whole section is repeated 12 times. I did not repeat that 12 times. It would have been 5 pages. So I just have it here for Reuben. But every word for word, is repeated 12 times. Interesting, huh? And then it says they're numbered, pikud men of the tribe of Reuben, 46,500. Of the sons of Shimeon, they're pikud men. In other words, every single man who's 20 years old and upward who can go to war of every tribe is beloved by God. And that's the message. And so he counts them by name. It doesn't, when he says number, it's not number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. It's not that. It's what's your name? Write it down. You are now pikuded. What's your name? Write it down. All these names were written down. That's how they were visited. They weren't just like, sound off, 1, 2, like in the army. It's not like that. They're numbered men of Simeon, 59,300. Of the sons of Gad. Now I'm going to see if you're paying attention here. Of the sons of Gad, they're numbered men, they're pikuded men, 45,650. Of the sons of Judah, they're pikud men, 74,600. Of the sons of Yisachar, they're numbered, they're pikuded men, 54,400. Of the sons of Zebulun, they're pikud men, 57,400. Of the sons of Yosef, that is, of the sons of Ephraim, they're pikud men, 40,500. Of the sons of Manasseh, they're pikud men, 32,200. Of the sons of Benjamin, they're pikud men, 62,700. Of the sons of Asher, they're pikud men, 41,500. Of the sons of Naphtali, they're pikud men, 53,400. All the pikud men of the sons of Israel by their fathers' houses from 20 years old and upward, 603,550. Whoop. Who had the most men? Which tribe had the most men? Judah. Who had the least men? Ooh, a numbers guy. A numbers dude. So here they are in order. Judah was the most. Who had the most land in Israel?
Dan.
No, not Dan. Dan had some of the smallest amount of land. Anybody know who had the most land in Israel? Think of both sides of the river. Both sides of the river. Manasseh. That's right. Manasseh had land on both sides of the river. And Manasseh had the most land of anybody. Look where they are. The least amount of people. Isn't that interesting? So here they are in order. Judah, then Dan, then Simeon, then Zebulun, Issachar, Naphtali, which is interesting that those three are together. Zebulun, Issachar, Naphtali. You know why? Because they're together as tribes. Naphtali, and then Reuben, then Gad and Asher. Interesting they're together because they're together in their tribes. Ephraim, Benjamin, and Manasseh. Isn't that interesting? They're together in their tribes. So this is not by accident. There's an order to this. The way God had them birth children, there was an order to it. Why? Because he loved every soul of Israel that was born. So, what about counting? We're just going to review from last week. We counted, you shall count to or for yourselves. Usfartem lachem, you shall count for yourselves the counting of the Omer. You count it to you. In other words, it should be personal. You should be, changing, dealing with things. It should not be an easy time because God is dealing with us about stuff. Because it's personal, and we count those 7 weeks to ourselves. And then in Leviticus 25, you shall count to yourself to the Jubilee. 7 times 7 years. V'sefarta lecha. You shall count to you, plural, to the Jubilee. So Israel's supposed to be counting all the time.
What's the next Jubilee?
I don't know. Did you know that Jews don't count? Did you know that? Literally count. If you say to a Jewish guy who owns a company, how many employees do you have? If he's Orthodox, he will not say. Yes, because we don't count. When we pray in the morning, you guys don't know about this apparently. When we pray in the morning, and we pray, God of our God and God of our fathers, may it be your will, Lord my God and God of our fathers, that you keep me from all evil. That one? That you keep me from all evil. Then it says, keep me from an evil occurrence. What's the next thing on there? Anybody remember?
Evil eye,
Yes, the evil eye. You know what the evil eye is? Stinginess.
Right.
That's what that is. And we don't count because we don't want to be stingy. That's what that's linked with. The reason Jews don't count stuff, usually, is because they don't want to link it. That's called the evil eye. So like in the Gentile world, and I'll give you an example. David went and counted all of Israel. What happened?
He got spanked.
He got spanked how? What happened? Anybody remember?
and there was
What happened though? What was the spanking? What happened? 70,000 men of Israel were killed by an angel standing over Jerusalem, right? With a scimitar in his hand. Why? Because David counted Israel. Well, God counted Israel 4 times in the book of Bamidbar. So how come David can't count Israel? Well, Joab, who was the leader of his army, said, David, don't do this. May God add 10 times more people than you've got. Don't do this. And he wouldn't listen. All right. This is why Jews don't count. God counted. God counted in the book of Bamidbar. Yes? That's why it's good. Because God counted. We don't count. God told Moshe to count them. That's why it's good. Other than that, we don't count. You don't count numbers, usually. Usually. All right, but these are the countings that we do. And then you remember the link of counting the days, of counting to Shavuot and counting to Jubilee. The question was, when is the next Jubilee? I do not know. When is, pertaining to counting to Shavuot and counting to the Jubilee, the link is that in Shavuot, at Shavuot, it said when there's a long drawn-out Jubilee, a long drawn-out Yovel, that's when you ascend and come see me. That's when you get to come see me. And that's a picture of the kingdom. And then it says, you shall proclaim a Jubilee, a Yovel, after each 50 years. All right. That's us counting. What about God counting? God counts for a different reason. God counts because he loves Israel, and it's that simple. He loves Israel. That's why he carries Israel on his heart. That's why the high priest carried Israel on their heart, because God carries Israel on his heart. He loves Israel. He counts every soul precious. Now, if you're a Gentile, you're here because you have a Jewish soul. And you are in that breastpiece somewhere. I don't know where, but you're there somewhere. Doesn't mean you're a Jew, but your soul is a Jewish soul. Doesn't mean you're a Jew. It means your soul is a Jewish soul. And that's why you care about this stuff, these Jewish things. Exodus 1 says, now these are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob. They came each one with his house. All the souls who came from the loins of Jacob were 70 in number. And I'm going to go back to what Rashi said. These are the names of the sons of Israel. Now, when he said this, This is commentary from Exodus 1:1. Just like he gave us commentary on Numbers 1:1 and said, God's counting because he's so full of love for Israel, right? Well, here in his commentary for Exodus 1:1, he says, and these are the names of the sons of Israel. Although God counted them in their lifetime by their names, he counted them again after their death to let us know how precious they are to him. So here it is again. God loves Israel. That's why he counts them. Because they were likened to the stars. Oh, because they're likened to the stars, which he takes out from beyond the horizon and brings in by number and by name. As it is said, who takes out their hosts by number, and all of them he calls by name. Now here, what he's quoting here, Isaiah 40, he's quoting God talking about the stars. But it's not talking about the stars in Isaiah 40. It's talking about Israel. And so he's saying, Israel, you're the stars. You see the stars? That's you. That's how much I love you. You're a little ball of light, although if just one of those tiny little stars got near the earth, most of them are bigger than the sun. And the sun is what? 10,000 times bigger than the earth? And most stars that we see are bigger than the sun. The sun is a medium-sized star. Did you know that? It's not a big star. It's medium. So, he says, Israel is the stars. Now in Psalm 147, verse 3 through 5, it says, he counts the number of the stars. He gives names to all of them. So what's he talking about? Children of Israel? Yeah. He's talking about something else too. Anybody know? Constellations? Yeah. He's talking about something else too. Anybody know? No? Okay, we'll get to that. Great is our Lord and abundant in strength. His understanding is just way out there. Isaiah 40, lift up your eyes on high and see who has created these. The one who leads forth their host by number. He calls them all by name because of the greatness of his might and the strength of his power. Not one of them is missing. Why do you say, O Jacob, and assert, O Israel? Why would he bring up Israel? He's talking about stars. Because Israel is the stars. Can you hand me the blue folder that's in the box? Why do you say, O Jacob, and assert, O Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord? And, we all know this. Behold, the word of the Lord, thank you, came to Avram, saying, this man, Eliezer, will not be your heir, but one who will come from your own body shall be your heir. And he took him outside, and he said, now, look to the... This, to me, every time I read this, I'm like, God, why would you make Abraham jump through hoops like this? Count, number the stars. Here in El Paso, we got a lot of light pollution. Maybe we could number the stars. Have you ever been way, way, way out in the desert where there's no lights at all? And this is like 4,000 years ago when there's no lights anyway. There's tens of thousands of them. You can't possibly number them all. It would take you years, but you could do it, I guess. But it's not just numbering them. It's like knowing that one different from that one, different from that one, and then like memorizing what the patterns look like. You know what I'm saying? This is not a small thing. This is an enormous, enormous task that God is telling Avram to do. By the way, Avram was a Gentile. It's Avram, not Avraham. It's Avram. First time he heard from God. He's a pagan. He's just a Babylonian dude. And God tells him, I want you to go outside, I want you to look up, and I want you to number all the stars you can see. And he says, if you're able to count them. In other words, this is a huge task. It's not a small thing. And he said to him, that's how your seed is going to be. What's how your seed is going to be? All the different magnitudes of light. Some brighter, some duller, but they're all lights. They're all beautiful. And they've all got names. They've all got names. And Abraham is supposed to know where they are. It's not a small thing. That's when he believed in Jehovah. That's when he believed. It's not mystical, magical words that God said that made him somehow, oh, I believe in thee, O Lord. Thou art different from all other gods. It's because he told him to go and do this job of counting every single star, and that's how Israel's going to be. Now, God comes along and he numbers Israel when they're in Egypt, right? And they're coming out of Egypt, and God counts them. How many were there? How many were there? We just went over it. No, 600,000 men on foot, remember? And then, after a year later, and they set up the Mishkan, and then it's ER1, and then God tells Moshe to number them again. There's 603,550. I'll bet you there's that many stars that were visible. I'll bet that's what it was. All I know is it's not a small task. Years and years ago, I got obsessed with the stars. When we had Derech Olam, I got obsessed with them. And I started going, well, what do we know about all that? I know what the pagans say. Orion and the bear and the Pleiades and Bootes and Capricornus and Sagittarius, the half man, half whatever it is, goat, and the half fish, the merman. I don't know which one that is, Aquarius or something like that. And all these crazy pictures, and a crab, which is an unkosher animal, and I'm like, this is so completely foreign to Judaism. And then I started finding out it is not foreign to Judaism, because I found a bunch of books that had all the names of the stars in the major constellations.
Was it not one that did that? Or was that around before?
I'll get to that in a sec. And they're mostly in Arabic. And then there's a whole bunch in Hebrew, badly translated Hebrew, like Japskamutrix or something like that. And I come to find out it's like two Hebrew words put together. Lots and lots and lots of Hebrew names for the stars. Lots of Arabic names. But those Arabic names can be tracked back down to the Hebrew. So this is the folder that I ended up with called Stars. And I did, I don't know, maybe a year's worth of work of research to try to figure out what these pictures of the constellations really look like. Not the foolish craziness of the Gentile world from the Greeks. And I started rebuilding them, and it started to make sense. And I was going to write a book, with all the names of the stars, and the story it tells is so specific. It's so specific about the Messiah. Then I found out that there are books that were written by Christians called Witness in the Stars, The Gospel in the Stars. And there's some good stuff in it, but most of it is just conjecture and paganism. But I was like, wow, I guess believers are trying to figure this out, which is good. I don't believe Abraham named the stars. I believe what the Jews say, that Adam named the stars. And that it was transferred down through the lineage, and Abraham got those names. But I know this, I know God told him to number them, to number the stars. Took him outside, now look to the heavens and count, number. It's the word sphira, counting the omer. It's the same exact word. When we count the days, do we just go, today's day 1, today's day 7? We don't. We did that formula, right? Today is, and by the way, we only did half the formula. Today is the 42nd day of the Omer. You're supposed to say, which is 6 weeks and no days is what we do. But because we're only counting on Shabbat, I left this off. So you go, today's 4 weeks and 2 days. Today's 5 weeks and 4 days, etc. That's how you count the Omer. That's how he counted the stars. That star is this, and that's where it is. It's next to that star. I know where it is. I know what it looks like. I know how bright it is, etc. In my opinion, this took him a long time to do. That's my opinion. But I know this. I know he was told to count the stars, and I know that God said, see those? That's going to be your seed. That's Israel. So, here's some other verses to give us some backing for that. Exodus 32:13. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants, to whom you swore by yourself and said to them, I will multiply your seed as the stars of heaven. And people read these verses and like, see, there's a whole bunch of Israel. That's not what it's saying. It's saying the names and the placement is Israel. That every star is important. Every member is important, and each one is like a star in the night. Deuteronomy 1:10, Jehovah your God has multiplied you, and behold you, oh, look what it says here. You are this day like the stars of heaven in number. What day was that in Deuteronomy chapter 1? The very beginning of Deuteronomy. Anybody know what the day is? No? Okay, it's certainly 40 years after they came out of Egypt. Yes? Yes? And now they're getting ready to go into Israel, in the land. Yeah? Okay, and that day, after God killed off the whole generation, their number is exactly the same as the number of the stars. Guess how many it is? It's right around 600,000. It's right around 600,000. It never varies too much from 600,000. And so that day, when they're about to go into Israel, God says, this day, your family matches the stars, the number of the stars. You see what the specificity I'm driving at here? Numbers 26, these are the ones who were numbered of the sons of Israel. Now, Numbers 26 is the same day as Deuteronomy chapter 1. How many is it? 601,730. Not too much off 600,000. Yeah? It never varies much. Exodus 12, now the sons of Israel journeyed from Egypt, about 600,000 men on foot. So what I'm showing you is this, that it's always about 600,000. And that it's always, in my opinion, that's how many of the stars were that were visible back then. It has changed because of all the light pollution. Yes?
So if we take Genesis from the beginning when God tells Abraham to count, right? From that day, how many years until he bore his son?
Until what?
Until he had his son.
Okay, the question is how many years from the time that God spoke to Avram to the time that Isaac was born, yes? Okay, exactly 25. God spoke to Avram when he was 75 years old. That's what it says. And then he was 100, exactly 100 when Isaac was born.
So how many years?
25 years. 25 years.
So that's how many years it took him to count the stars?
Oh, you're saying that's how long it took him to count the stars. Maybe you may be right. I would not doubt that at all. And the reason I wouldn't doubt is because I've done the research. You guys have no idea what's in here. There's maps of the stars, maps and maps and maps and maps and drawings and writings and names and trying to figure out the names in Hebrew. Pages and pages and pages and pages of the research. So he didn't have a library that I know of. So you might be right, yes.
Well, something to add to that, astronomers and scientists are saying that the expanse of space is growing, so is that how much bigger the kingdom is growing?
So you're saying that astronomers and astrologists and scientists are saying that the universe is growing?
Yes.
Is that how?
Yes.
So like the culmination is the kingdom. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until the kingdom. Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. Why not? It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. The universe gets bigger and bigger and more expansive until the kingdom comes. And that's as big as it's going to get. That makes sense to me. All right, so how about this? Maybe you've heard this. Let me ask the question first. Have you guys heard this in Judaism that there's 600,000 letters in the Torah? Have you heard that? Okay, Jews have been saying that for millennia. There's 600,000 letters in the Torah. Why? Because there's 600,000 Jews, más o menos, more or less. Okay? This is just one part of this article from Malki Janowski from Chabad.org. It's a really smart woman. She's amazing. There are 304,800 plus letters in the Torah. Uh-oh. And by the way, the rabbis know that. And the rabbis say there's 600,000 letters in the Torah. But the rabbis know there's 304,800 plus letters in the Torah. Right. But we often hear of the 600,000 letters in the Torah. The black are the letters we see. White, right. While the white, the inverse space between the black, are the letters we don't see. The count, now watch this, she's really smart. The count of 600,000 includes both the black and the white letters. Knowing this, there's an interesting law about writing a Torah scroll that now makes a lot of sense. If any letter, this is a law, when you're writing the Torah scroll, this is a law you have to follow. If any letter has no space around it, in other words, if two letters hit, the entire Torah is invalid. So you must have the negative space and the positive space. You must have the black letter next to the white letter. Does that make sense? Even though all the letters are complete, even though they're complete, if you got two letters cramming against each other, it's no good, it's invalid. According to what we've just said, this is easy to understand. Although the revealed black letters would be complete, a hidden white letter would be missing. And you cannot have any soul from Israel missing. That make sense? That's reading. That is literally reading between the lines. Very good. So again, we're going to keep coming back to this amazing statement by Rashi. God counted them in their lifetime by their names, again after their death, to let us know how precious they are to him, because they were like the stars. Now, if you're thinking, okay, that's good for them, what about me? Problem with that, and a good thing about that. The problem with that is you're selfish and you're self-centered. We're taught to be that way, especially Christians are taught to be that way when it comes to God's plan, which is always anchored on Israel. So, sorry, that's just the way it is. So, as the formerly Gentile rabbi of Lapid Judaism says, suck it up. These are not my words, these are his words. Suck it up. This is just the way it is. All right, that's the bad news. Now, here's the good news. Good news is, dude, you're plugged into it. So what are you crying about? You're plugged into this. So if whatever it is that you're plugged into, figure it out. And you'll see it, and it's like, wow, that's me? That's amazing. That's the good news, and that's what I'm trying to get to. To let us know how precious they are to him, because they were like the stars. He brings them in by number and by name. So Job 9:7 says this. Who establishes the sun not to shine and puts a seal on the stars? In other words, says, that's it. The stars are set. You can't have any more. They're not going to move in any different way. They're only going to move the way I say to move. It's sealed. Now, who does that? Obviously, God's the only one who can do that. Who alone stretches out the heavens and treads on the heights of the sea? Did you ever see that? That's why Yeshua walked on water, because it's prophesied he would. God walks on the waves, the heights. By the way, it says in Hebrew, the heights of the sea. Well, how can the sea be heights? Giant waves. Giant waves. Who makes, now this is how it's translated in English. It is awful, awful, awful translation. The bear, horrible translation. Orion, horrible translation. And the Pleiades, horrible translation. Now this is good translation. And the constellations, that's good translation. Of the south. It is he who does great things, the unfathomable and wondrous works without number. So this is so funny. The one bear, and this is like really big. It's like one of the most obvious constellations in the sky to the Greeks. And so they called it the bear. Big bear and little bear, right. The Big Dipper and the Little Dipper. That's bad translation too. But this is funny. The bear. You know why? Because in Hebrew it's to bear something up. And they went, bear. Bear. Not bear. Isn't that ridiculous? You got the right word, wrong word. So, to bear, ash. It means a bier, a funeral bier, B-E-I-R. You know what, like how they would carry bodies, the Jews would carry bodies on a funeral bier. Now they carry a casket. But it didn't used to be like that. They would carry like on a palanquin, like a big platform that they would carry around. It's called say it again? That's coming back. Great. That's called a funeral bier. It literally means borne aloft or carried. And so the Greeks heard bear and went, bear. That's ridiculous. It's short for na'ash, which means to bear up or to carry. In Arabic, it's straight up a funeral bier. Ash in Arabic is straight up a funeral bier. Now, how about Orion? The most common one, everybody knows Orion. The Greeks named that constellation Orion. And they said it's the, and you know, believers see this, and many of them, especially in the 1800s, they wrote books and articles and whatnot saying, this is a picture of the Messiah, the great hunter in the sky, not hunter, but you know, a warrior, the great giant warrior in the sky. It's the Messiah. Only in Hebrew, the name of the constellation is Kasil, which means a fool. Literally means a fool. This is not the Messiah. Kasil, fool or foolish, comes from kasal, to be fat or stupid or silly in a good sense, like a clown. Some Middle Easterners call that constellation Nephilah. You know who the Nephilim are, right? The giants, the demons. Yeah, that's the Messiah, huh? The Nephilah, the giant. And it is. It's a huge constellation. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows those 3 stars in the belt, right? And Beetlejuice in the shoulder. You'd be surprised to find out what Beetlejuice, where that comes from. It comes from Hebrew. And they turn it into Beetlejuice. It's crazy. The Pleiades. Now, the Pleiades is not a horrible translation, only it's in Greek. And it means like a gathering of people, which isn't a bad translation. It's kima in Hebrew, which means to heap up. It means a heap of things. Now, nowadays, for us to see the Pleiades, you have to look at it through the corner of your eye, like, what's that called? Peripheral vision. You can't, like if you just like look at it and look for it, it's hard to see. It's very faint. It's a cluster of 7 stars. Back then, it was a bright constellation. It was very easy to see. And there was a whole lot more than 7 stars. There's 7 big ones and a whole bunch of small ones. And they're clustered together, and guess where they are? In the shoulder of the ox, Taurus, which is a huge constellation. And right in the shoulder, here comes the Pleiades. Well, now to see it, we can see it, but you can't look right at it to see it clearly. You have to look at it through your peripheral vision. So it's a heap or a cluster or an accumulation. It comes from kum, to heap up. Consists of 7 larger stars and then several smaller stars clustered together. Pleiades, from the Greek, means congregation of the judge. So not a horrible translation, but it's not super accurate. And then it says the word constellations. Now this is the one everybody knows, but nobody knows. The reason is this. Everybody says mazel tov, mazel. Oh, don't say that. It means luck. It means luck. Luck is from Lucifer. That's not good. That's ridiculous. Mazal means to drip or to flow, right? It means flow. And I did a whole series of teachings about flow, shefa, that God flows down to us what we cause to flow. It's all up to us. We either respond to what he's doing with us, or we don't. If we do, he flows down good. If we don't, he flows down discipline. Now, shefa is related to this word mazel. I know they don't sound anything like each other, but they really mean basically exactly the same thing. Mazal, which I'll get to in a minute. I'm going to talk about mazar first. So it really says mazarot, but then in other places in the Bible it says mazalot. So they're interchangeable. The constellations, the mazarot, is also mazalot. But they mean totally different things, which is weird. So mazarot is for or the same as mazalot. Mazarot means lodging places or inns. Why? Because there are 12 houses. You've heard this? Like, you were born in the house of Aquarius, man. You ever heard the house of Aquarius? You ever heard that? It's the age of Aquarius. All right, so there's houses. There's a house of Virgo, the house of Aquarius, the house of Cancer, etc. Because there's 12 houses. And by the way, the whole world calls them houses. Well, this is literally the word an inn or a house. Literally. That's what mazarot means. Houses or inns. Lodging places. Why? Because the sun stops and lodges in that place. Stops and lodges in that place. Stops and lodges in that place. Month by month. If you've never read the book of Enoch, you better be ready to really think if you're gonna read it. It's amazing reading, but it is a hard read. It's a hard read. And when it's talking about the sun stopping in these houses, it talks to us as if we're supposed to know this, and we don't know this, and it is weird sounding. So these houses, mazarot, is really the same thing as mazalot. How do we know this? Because in Scripture, it'll be talking about the stars, and it'll say mazarot. And then another place, it's talking about the stars, and it says mazalot. And then another one says mazarot, and another one says mazalot. So we know it's talking about the same thing. Now in Arabic, it means the circle of palaces. The circle, the cycle of the year of palaces or lodging places or houses. The rabbis called each of the 12 houses of the months mazal. Mazal. Which people say, good luck, mazel tov. That's what it's been reduced down to. It does not mean that. Mazalah comes from mazalah, which means to drip, to flow, to gush, to pour, or a stream. Literally a stream. It's the same as to flow. Shefa, to flow. And God flows down to us. I know this is going to sound weird. God flows down to us stuff from the stars. I know that sounds weird. Sounds like astrology, right? That the astrologers say that the stars control everything, right? They're right. Except not for Israel. We get our shefa, our flow, every month from Israel, who are the stars. Make sense? So what happened was, the world, the Greeks primarily, took this amazing truth that Israel flows to you. Israel flows to you. Something different every month. To you, personally. Every month. And they took that and they twisted it and said, oh, let's worship that. It's giving me this. And that one is giving me this. And that one is giving me this. So I'm going to worship it so it'll be nice to me and give me more. And they're right. It's for them. It's twisted and it's perverted and it's weird. But it's true. We don't know this because we don't worship demons. But if we worshiped a demon and it gave us something, wouldn't we go, oh, great demon, I'm going to give you something back? Right? That's what Satan worshipers do. They give to the devil so that the devil will give good stuff to them. All right, it's twisted, but it's actually a truth. So mazal does not mean luck; it means to flow. And the rabbis call the constellations, the 12 constellations. Look at this. They call it Galgal Mazalia. Gagal Mazalia. Now, Mazalia it's Aramaic, so it's not Hebrew. It sounds a little different. It would just be Mazal in Hebrew. But because it's Aramaic, it's Mazalia. But it's called Galgal. What does Galgal mean? Galgal. Right, skull, the head. It means a circle. It means rolling, a circle. Why? Because the 12 constellations are 12 houses in a circle, the circle of palaces. And so the rabbis call it the same thing. They recognize this, that it's the 12 houses of the king. Now, in Job 38, it says, can you bind up the delights or pleasures of Kima? What is Kima? What do the Greeks call Kima? Did you forget? No. We have Bear, Orion, Pleiades, and constellations. Which one is Kima? Pleiades, right. The heap. So it says in Job, can you bind up the delights of Kima, the heap? Or loose the cords of Kesil, the fool? I don't know what that means. All I know it is God is saying, Job, can you do that? I can. That's all I know. But it's in the Bible. The constellations are in the Bible, right? Amos 5, he who made Kima and Kesil and changes deep darkness into morning, who darkens day into night, who calls for the waters of the sea and pours them out on the face of the earth. Jehovah is his name. So again, these are in the Bible. Isn't that a trip? So they were named, they were numbered, they were loved. Now it's going to start getting strange. And I'm going to show you, I asked you in the beginning, I said, what are the stars really? What else are they besides lights in the sky? You said Israel. What was the other thing? Constellations. And then I said there's something else. Anybody know what it is? And nobody knew. Now I'm going to show you. It's something else. Well, I won't say it yet. But before we look at that, I'm going to show you this. I told you that the Gentiles were given the constellations for Shefa. It really does. Like one constellation will give growth of plants. Another constellation will give rain. To the Gentiles, not to Israel, to the Gentiles. So it doesn't work that way with Israel, and that's why it says in Deuteronomy, I'm going to see if I can pull this up. I don't know if I can. Yeah, I can. Okay, so I'm going to try to read some of this to you. I just want to give you a sense of it. But before we do, I want you to see this. That this doesn't mean what I think people have thought, me included, means. I think it means something totally different than we thought. Deuteronomy 4:19, do not raise your eyes to the heavens to look at the sun, the moon, and the stars, all the heavenly lights, and allow yourself to be drawn away and worship them and serve them, which Jehovah your God has allotted, what? To all the peoples. I don't want you to do that. That's what I've allotted for all the other peoples, to worship those constellations. That's not for you. For you is something else. Now, there are about 40 passages in Kings and Chronicles and Samuel that says literally that's exactly what Israel did. that they worshiped all the host, tzvaot, armies of heaven. All they worshiped the sun and the moon and the stars, kochavim. And there's many, many, many passages that say it. But God here says, and this is how I'm reading it now, don't raise your eyes to heaven and look at the sun and the moon and the stars and the heavenly lights and allow yourself to be drawn away and worship them and serve them, because God has allowed all the other peoples to do that. That's how they get their shefa. Did you ever wonder why astrology is so gigantic in the world? And people, I mean, hey, baby, what's your sign? That's what it's been brought down to. But guys, come on. Everybody you've ever met, including most believers, are into astrology in some form or another. Because the whole world is. This is nothing like bizarre. This is like the whole world is like this. It's very, very, very common. And here's just one out of those 40 verses. They burn sacrifices to all the heavenly lights. Isaiah 47:13, you are wearied with your many counsels. This is Isaiah talking to Israel. Let now the astrologers, those who prophesy by the stars. I always thought it was so stupid that, I went to an astrologer and they did my chart. You ever heard that? They did my chart? Okay. Maybe some of you have done that. And I always thought, they're lights in the sky. They're like the sun, only way, way, way far away. And that's going to do something with my life? That's insanity. But it's not. It's not. They really do have influence over this world. Except not for Israel. And the only way out from it is to be with Israel. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because for Israel, the stars are us. They're not some, Jupiter and Saturn and Venus and these other demons. That's us. That's Israel. You are wearied with your many counsels. Let now the astrologers, those who prophesy by the stars, and these are Jews that he's talking to, those who predict by the new moon. Oh, you can make predictions by the new moon? Stand up and save you from what's about to come to you. You want to turn to that stuff? Let that save you. Instead of doing it like Israel's supposed to do it. So I'm going to read a little bit from this craziness called the book of Enoch. You're not going to understand anything I say. So just don't veg out. Try to follow it. You're not going to be able to follow it, but try to follow it. And the leaders of the heads of the thousands, which are not people, guess what they are? They're angels with names, which are stars. Each star is an angel, or a picture of an angel. Each star is a picture of an angel. And each star is a picture of Israel. Therefore, the stars are like the angels, and the angels are like Israel. The lights in the darkness, the only light in the darkness. The leaders of the heads of the thousands who are placed over the whole creation and over all the stars have also to do with the 4 intercalary days. You know what? The 4 intercalary days. You know what that is?
Oh, sure.
The new moon. Figuring out when the new moon is. That's what the intercalary days are. According to the reckoning of the year, and these render service on the 4 days which are not reckoned in the reckoning of the year. And owing to them, men go wrong. Owing to the 4 intercalary days, men mess it all up because they can't figure it out. For those luminaries truly render service on the world stations, one in the first portal, one in the third portal of the heavens. You know what portals are? The houses. And then there's 3 portals per house. One in the first portal, one in the third portal, one in the fourth portal, and one in the sixth portal. And the exactness of the year is accomplished through its separate 364 stations. For the signs of the times and the years and the days of the angel Uriel showed to me, whom the Lord of glory has set forever over all the luminaries of heaven, in the heaven and in the world, and they should rule on the face of the heaven and be seen on the earth, and be leaders for the day and the night. And it goes on like that for page after page after page, and I don't understand a word it's saying. Not one word. Until I look at the names of the stars. And then when I look at the names of the stars, I'm like, oh, that's what he meant. And I start getting a little inkling of what's going on, just a tiny bit of what's going on. We don't know nothing. Our ignorance is just so enormous that it's ridiculous. And then we complain about our life. We don't know anything. So we need to go find stuff. We got to learn. Don't complain about your life. Get off your butt and go learn stuff. Figure out what Judaism teaches. And it'll answer some of your questions, but it takes work. So Judges 5 says, now here's what I want to show you. The stars are alive. They're living. They're not dead. They're alive. They do stuff. They give shefa. Judges 5, the stars fought from heaven. What in the world does that mean? The stars fought from heaven? How can stars fight from heaven? They're just suns. 1 million miles, 2 million, 20 million, a billion miles away. They're suns. But they fought from heaven, from their paths. From their paths, they fought against Sisera. What are their paths? Their path through the sky. And that fought against Sisera? Weird. Isn't that weird? Yeah. But that's what it says in the Word of God. Right? Crazy. Job 38, who set its measurements, since you know? Or who stretched the measuring line over it? On what were the earth's bases sunk? Who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together. How do stars sing? And all the sons of God shouted for joy. Now, most rabbis say, not all, but most rabbis say that this is like just saying two things in a row that are the same. The morning stars sang for joy. The morning stars sang together, and the sons of God shouted for joy. Therefore, the morning stars are the sons of God. Make sense? I think I agree with that. Nehemiah 9, you alone are the Lord. You have made the heavens, the heaven of heavens, with all their lights. The earth and everything that is on it, the seas and everything that's in them. You gave life. You gave life. You gave life to all. You gave life to stars. Isn't that weird? You gave life to stars, to the sun, to the moon. They're living things. You gave life to all of them, and the heavenly lights bow down before you. The heavenly lights sing, the heavenly lights fight, the heavenly lights bow down. This is weird. So obviously, they're a picture of angels, the host, Tzvaot. It says God is called the commander of the host, the commander of the Tzvaot. And it's talking about all the angels, right? Okay. It also calls all the stars the Tzvaot, the hosts. Therefore, stars equals angels equals Israel. They're all basically the same thing. Yes, that's what I'm thinking, that there are 600,000 más o menos, more or less, angels, because there are 600,000 Jewish souls. And so there are probably 600,000 visible stars back then. Make sense? Isaiah 14. How you have fallen from heaven, Helel. Now everybody translates this Lucifer, and it makes me so mad. They'll be reading the Bible and all of a sudden read like Orion and Pleiades, some Latin word. Why? Why go to Latin if it's in Hebrew? Hillel, that's the dude's name. This is the devil's name, Hillel. It's from halal, to praise, to be bright, shiny, insane, like crazy light, crazy joy. Son of the dawn, son of the dawn. What is dawn? Sunrise, when the star comes up. You have been cut down to earth. You have defeated the nations. But you said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I'll raise my throne above the stars of God. So what's he talking about here? What are the stars? Israel or the angels. He's saying, I'm going to put my throne above those angels. I will raise my throne above the stars of God, and I will sit on the Mount of Assembly in the far north, in heaven.
That's also related to Revelation.
That is related to Revelation, but I don't want to go there yet. Daniel 8. Now, you got to follow this. So don't veg out on me. You got to follow. There's a bunch of details in it. 8 through 11. The male goat made himself exceedingly great. Now what happened was Daniel sees this male goat just coming really, really fast. Like, you ever seen goats mad? When they just buck at you and they come at you? He's coming at him, and he's coming fast. The male goat made himself exceedingly great. But once he became powerful, the large horn, he's got 2 horns on him, and one of them's bigger than the other one. He's got 1 horn. I'm sorry. He's got 1 horn on him. This is the other one. Once he became powerful, the large horn was broken, and in its place 4 prominent horns came up toward the 4 winds, north, south, east, west. And out of one of those 4, came a small horn which grew very big, and it grew up to the heavenly lights. This horn got so big that it grew up to the heavenly lights. What are the heavenly lights? Stars or angels. And it threw some of them to the earth. Threw some of the heavenly lights to the earth. I don't remember that ever happening. And it trampled them. It even exalted itself to be equal with the commander of the Tzvaot, the commander of the hosts. That's God. And it removed the regular sacrifice from him, and the place of his sanctuary was thrown down. Who stopped the sacrifices and then destroyed the temple? Rome. All right? But this is talking about the false Messiah. It's also talking about Rome. So you can see in this graphic, here comes this mad goat, which is Alexander, the Greeks. And he's coming at you with 1 horn. And then that horn is snapped off, and in its place come up 4 horns. These were his 4 generals: Ptolemy, Seleucus, Lysimachus, and Cassander. Now, out of one of those 4 guys came another horn, and out of that came the false Messiah. Yes, of course we know which one. It's Seleucus, because Antiochus came from Seleucus. Antiochus was Antiochus the 4th. He was the 4th king of Seleucus, of the Seleucids. And he was the one who put a stop to Judaism, didn't he? And he defiled the temple, didn't he? Well, there's going to be another one who's just like him. So, what I want you to see here is that false Messiah grew up to the heavenly lights, and he threw some of the lights, the stars, down to earth. Now, everybody says, in the Christian world, primarily, that Satan fell from heaven along with who? A third of the angels. I know you've heard this, right? That Hasatan fell from heaven with a third of the angels. This has not happened yet. This is going to happen in the day of the Lord. I can tell you the date it's going to happen in the day of the Lord, but that's for another time. Daniel 12, 1 through 5. you're in the birth pangs here, and he says, now at that time, Michael, the great prince, who stands over the sons of your people, will arise. And there will be a time of distress such as has never happened since there was a nation until that time. And at that time, your people will be rescued. And many who sleep in the dust of the ground will wake up. So here's the resurrection at the very beginning of the day of the Lord. And those who have insight will shine like the expanse of heaven. These are Jews. And those who lead the many to righteousness will be just like the stars forever and ever. That's Israel, shining lights during the birth pangs. Now, Philippians 2, I've heard this quoted by many, many, many believers. But they don't know what they're quoting. They don't know what it relates to in the Old Testament. But if you know what it relates to in the Old Testament, it's absolutely amazing. Philippians 2, do everything without complaining and arguments. Isn't that amazing? So that you will prove yourself to be blameless and tamim, perfect. Children of God, above reproach, in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you appear as lights in the world. What's he quoting? He's quoting Daniel chapter 12, that says that in the birth pangs, that the Jews, those who lead many to righteousness, will be just like the stars. They'll appear like the stars to everybody in this crooked and perverse and disgusting time of birth pangs. Now, he says in Jude, he's talking about evil people during the birth pangs, and he says this about them. But these people disparage all the things that they don't understand. Woe to them, because they've gone the way of Cain and the error of Bilam and the rebellion of Korach. Wild waves of the sea, churning up their own shameful deeds like foam. Wandering stars. Does that bother you? Aren't stars supposed to wander through the sky?
Specific path, yeah.
Yes, they travel. They don't wander. Wandering is not good. Wandering is going where you don't know to go. But remember, God said, I set their paths, Job. It's sealed. And those, as they travel through the sky, that path is set. But these are like stars that just kind of go where they want. They're evil angels. They're evil Israel. You ever heard the phrase synagogue of Satan? That's these dudes. Wandering stars for whom the gloom of darkness has been reserved forever. You want to be a star? Fine, be in the dark. Revelation 1. In his right hand he held 7 stars, and out of his mouth came a sharp 2-edged sword. As for the mystery of the 7 stars that you saw, the 7 stars are the angels of the 7 congregations. Now, what does that mean? The pastors? No. It's not churches. These are synagogues. They're messianic synagogues. And there's an angel over each one. Because there's an angel over every single Jew that is numbered. The congregations are numbered. The people are numbered. This is what we're plugged into. God numbers us. God counts us. He knows us by name. But big flip. Who cares? At least that's how we act. That's where we get guardian angel from. That, and by the way, there's a bunch of verses that say each person has an angel. This is just one. So we're coming back to what Rashi said. And these are the names of the sons of Israel. Although God counted them in their lifetime by their names, he counted them again after their death to let us know how precious they are. Because they're likened, because they're just like the stars, which he takes out from beyond the horizon and leads them in by name. That sound familiar to anybody? He takes them out from beyond and he leads them in by name. As it is said, who takes out their host by number, all of them he calls by name. Takes out their tzvaot by number, angels, stars, Israel, and he calls them all by name. Jeremiah 31 says this: if I get rid of the fixed order of the sun and the moon and the way the planets move, then I'll turn my back on Israel. That's when I turn my back on Israel. You cannot break that motion in the heavens. And yet, this is exactly what Rome has done. They've tried to take that and control it and say, give me this. And then the Jews come along and go, hey, that's a picture of God. That's a picture of a demon. That's a picture of me. That's a picture of you. And the Romans go, no, that's my God. He's going to give to me. Why don't you come do it with me? I'll show you how it works. Here, if you do this, that Jupiter is going to give you this. Look, every night you can see Venus really, really bright. She's going to give you this if you worship her. Watch how it works. And they did, and the Jews followed it. But God says if you can change that pattern that he set, that's when God will turn his back on Israel. That's when. Now, John 10 takes this concept. Yeshua used this concept that's in Isaiah 40, and he turned it into sheep. He's going to bring them out, and he's going to lead them in by name, right? He's going to number them and name them. He's going to lead them in by name. Yes? Why? Because he loves them so much. Truly, truly, I say to you. Oh, by the way, do you know when he said this? When Yeshua said this? Anybody know?
So yeah, Hanukkah.
Very good. On Hanukkah. Very good, Chris. He said this on Hanukkah. Truly, truly, I say to you, the one who does not enter by the door into the fold of the sheep, but climbs up some other way, he's a thief and a robber. I'm sure you've heard this taught many times. But the one who enters by the door is a shepherd of the sheep. What does the shepherd do with the sheep? Leads them. He leads them. To him, the doorkeeper opens, and the sheep listen for his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name, and what does he do? Leads them out. That's what it says here, Isaiah 40. He who takes out their host by number, by name, all of them, he calls by name. He takes them out by name. And that's what God does with us. But only because we're linked with Israel, plugged into Israel. That's it. That's the only benefit we got. Now, I'm ending with this because we're in the counting of the Omer. I don't necessarily know how to tie this in with what I've taught, but I want to remind you, you need to know what your gift is, and you need to know how to use it. Because this is the only way that we're going to build up the body. That's our job. You need to know what your gift is, and you need to be able to say it, and you need to be able to use it appropriately. You need to learn how to use it. The evangelist cuts them down, brings them in. The pastor then spanks them gently. Then the teacher separates between good and bad doctrine. And then the prophet speaks words of fire that gets to the heart and changes the person. And then the apostle sifts and sifts and sifts and sifts and sifts 13 times until it's perfect. But to each one of us a gift was given. Now this is how Israel functions. And the only connection I found between this and the study of the stars, can anybody think of what it is? I'll give you a hint. I'll give you a hint. It's in this verse, Job 9. After all that stuff is done to the grain, what does it become?
Flour.
What else?
The loaf of bread.
It becomes an amount, yeah? An amount that is then put in a vessel. But before it's put in a vessel, what does it look like? Say it again? Exactly, a heap.
Yeah.
a heap, the Pleiades, maybe, the congregation of the judge, the collection of the believers. Maybe that's what the heap is. That's the only connection I can find. But I know this, that for us, for our life, if we are plugged into Israel, and that's our only benefit, and Israel is counting the Omer, and Israel is bringing up a heap of flour, a heap of wheat, and then a heap of flour, and then putting it in a vessel, and then offering it to God, that's what we should be doing. You must know what your gift is. Stop running away from your gift. It's a waste of time. It's not just a waste of energy, it's a big waste of time. You need to be able to say, this is my gift, and I'm going to use it. If I don't know how to use it, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to go study and find out how to use that gift. Does that make sense? And this is, I hope this convicts you, because I've heard some people say, I don't know what my gift is. That's not me. And it just sounds so tarnished and so, I don't want to say dirty, but tarnished, like not bright, not clean, not good. You need to know what your gift is to use it. So I would end by just encouraging you that if you want to be plugged into Israel and you want that shefa that Israel gives, you got to do it like Israel does it, or else you're not going to get that shefa. You're not. And the way Israel does it is they find out what their gift is and they use it. At least it's how it used to be. Make sense? All right, let's pray. Father, thank you that you have made us part of those stars. You've made us part of the congregations, the constellations. You've made us part of Israel. You've made us part of your flock that's in the sky, that's in the heavens, in the darkness, to rule over this horrible, evil, dark Roman world. And I thank you, Abba, that you teach us your ways, you show us your ways. I thank you, Father, for showing our hearts what you want to change in us individually, and showing our minds how to wrestle with you about it, and how to come to a position where we don't fight with it anymore. And it's hard, Lord. It's difficult to figure that out, and I ask that you'd help us to figure it out. It's not magic. You're not going to just give us some magical answer. I ask that you'd work with us, and that you'd help us to grow and to change and to become refined, more refined. And I thank you, Abba, that you never stop working with us, because you love us so much. We are dear to you. We are dear to you. Thank you, Abba. Amen. Let's stand for the Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabayach la'adon ha'kol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו במשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. Let us adore the Lord of all, who in greatness created the world from of old, that he has not made us like the nations of the earth, not made us like the families of the land. He's not made our destiny like theirs, or cast our lot with all of them. Look at those words. Think about the heavens, and think about the Shefa, and think about like how the whole world uses the stars, and how we're supposed to do it in Judaism. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. And it is said, the Lord shall be king over all the earth. In that day, the Lord shall be one, and his name one. Va'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim Lifnei Melech Malachei Hamlachim Hakadosh Baruch Hu. And we bend the knee and bow in worship and give thanks to the King of Kings, the Holy One. Blessed is He. We acknowledge before the King of Kings that there's none like Him, there's nothing but Him. As Torah says, know that the Lord, He is God in the heavens above and on the earth beneath. Ein od milvado. There's nothing else but Him. Shabbat Shalom. Let's do Kiddush.